All right, so what I want to move into now, April, is I want to just talk a little bit about how you got this way, right? Because I know certainly your first impression was that, this problem's been there for the last week or so, since you took that lift. But as we talked about on your intake visit, we actually, I believe and contend that this problem's actually been there a little bit longer, okay? It's like the example I used the other day where we talked about, the arteries to our hearts could be partially closed. Neither one of us would know that because there's no mechanism to know that. Our body just doesn't have a way to tell us that until we get to, maybe 80 or 90% closed. And the first warning sign for 50% of Canadians is they die, because 50% of Canadians actually die from their first heart attack, right? Obviously, we're not talking about something quite as significant as that, but we certainly are talking about that same process, April, okay? So again, if you go back to your initial history here, it looks to me from talking about your birth, and in fact, it was a quick birth, and your mom's water broke early, I think you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you're a mom, so you know that process. It isn't an easy process to have a baby. And so there's a lot of stress and a lot of force put on. And with any sort of an assisted birth, whether you're talking about just, doctors in there trying to navigate things, or you're talking about, sadly, vacuum extraction or that stuff, there's a lot more pressure put on the baby's body and particularly on their head. And as you know, April, right, that the head of a child is like a bowling ball. It's like the heaviest part of the child when they're really young. And so the heads and necks are twisted and torqued. It's a lot of stress on the nerve system. And certainly in my career, April, I've had over 95 brand new newborn babies that I've checked, and all but 2 of them were subluxated from the birth process. So this isn't just some theoretical abstract for me. This is actually a physical process that I've seen. And so again, if that was the first subluxation, and again, sadly, April, as you said, you weren't checked by a chiropractor early on, correct?
Yeah.
Right? And so what happens then is that problem is basically brought in there, and the body starts to adapt. It starts to think it's normal. And as a result of thinking it's normal, it's layered onto that, and then the next memory can take place on top of that. Okay? Did I explain that okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? And I know you said here that you were 2 and you did a header down the stairs and you walker, right?
Yeah.
Tumbly, tumbly, tumbly. Again, I wasn't there, can't know it, but if you look at the concussion of forces your body would have had to go through, man, I tend to believe that was probably at least the second layer of subluxation, assuming there might not have been some other ones in between, because statistics tell us that your average newborn child, when they're learning to walk, falls on average 25 times a day right on their butt. I don't know about you, April. I felt 25 times a day in my butt. I would be super subluxated. And again, a child with their bowling ball flopping around. And no wonder these kids get into trouble. And it's no wonder that we see so many kids, here in our office as well, because there's so many parents, April, that, I don't know if you're like this, but this is certainly the way I'm with my kids. Most parents want something more for their kids than what they had. Right?
Sure.
Is that true for you too?
Yeah.
And so, I wasn't educated about, my parents weren't educated about chiropractic when I was a child, but now that we are, and we understand the incredible function of the nerve system and the importance of it, we make sure that our kids get their nerve systems checked on a regular basis, not because necessarily of any aches or pains, but because we want them to develop and fulfill their entire ability to be the best that they can be in their lives, right? So, again, I know you've got a couple of children, April, as well.
Yeah.
I would love the privilege to be able to check them someday, okay?
For sure.
So,
I would love to bring them in.
Okay, that'll be great. Well, listen, you know what? Once we get done with today, we'll talk to Sandra at the front desk, and she can get us set up, and we can check them. And maybe they're fine, but how will we know if we don't actually check them, right?
Sure.
Because I'm going to bet at this point, with the age of your kids, you obviously they've had their first dental checkup, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But yet not big dental problems, if I remember correctly?
Nope.
No, absolutely. And again, it's that more preventative, proactive promotion aspect of health is something that's becoming more important all the time, April, right? Okay. I also remember here you talked a little bit about how that fell out of the tree when you were 7, and again, no broken bones, but wow, again, huge concussion of forces. My guess, April, another layer of subluxation. And then, as you said, that, like most of us, the love of your life kind of breaks your heart up a little bit. The mental, emotional, stressful. Hindsight, maybe not that big of a deal, but at the time, it's a really big deal. And with that extra pressure, April, too, another adaptive response to the nervous system that the nervous system just can't adapt to, and we get this other layer. And we want to go into that age, April, right? There's certainly been other things. I know you said you got a great boss, but there are some work stress at times, right?
Yeah.
And so there's those different things that go on in our lives that just our body adapts and it adapts and it adapts, and then finally says, I can't take it anymore. That's when we trip the breaker switch, which we call subluxation, and that's basically the process that if it's not corrected, it's layered on top of, and it's layered on top of, and we get to this stage of our lives, April, there could be 30, 40, 50, or maybe 300 or 400 layers of subluxation. And again, with understanding that, that's why it takes a period of time to basically unlayer that. Because as we go in and start the process of correcting this, we're going to unlayer this thing one layer at a time to get it back to its most optimal level of function in order to honor your choice.
Okay.
Any questions about that, April?
No.
Making common sense at this point?
Totally.
Great stuff. All right, well, let's Let's move on to the next piece of the puzzle here then, okay?